selecting 1550 eventual matriculants out of 38,000, that is an incredibly difficult job. But it also means that we have an incredible wealth of talent that's interested in coming here and is very heavily represented in the first year class. So that's one thing. So any parents here, you kids or your, not kids, I suppose, your children, or that's also, what's the right word? Your students are joining because you have to be careful using words like kids and children. They're adults now, right? So anyway, I'm sensitive to that. So your students are joining a very exclusive class. So that's number one. Number two, it's also a very diverse class. Out of the 1550 students, 26% identify themselves as underrepresented. That is a big number, given the fact that it is always difficult to have a diverse class. We are very proud of that achievement. 15% of them are from the state of Ohio, which means that the majority of the students in the incoming class are international, national, and international. So it is a very diverse class from that perspective. And 15% of them are international. So that's also interesting. So it is a very diverse population. The implication is that students come here, and in some cases, or in many cases even, they may be in smaller environments. This is a much bigger pool. You meet very different mindsets, very different viewpoints, very robust conversations. Debates ensue, I'm sure. I remember those having those as an undergraduate. So it's a time for great growth, not just in terms of intellectual, but also in terms of as a person, right? So I think there are very interesting implications for us incoming students this year. Now, I mentioned the number 1550. That is a total number coming into the university. Roughly 580 of those have declared an interest in engineering, so it is a big class. So that is a big number. Okay, so if you again listen to the president, he probably talked about three big priorities in his presidential term. The first one is to enhance the student experience, and we'll focus a lot on it today. And Dan, as I mentioned, is an expert in many of the things I'm going to talk about, so that's one thing. So that means that students, they already get a good education. We want to, but there's always room for improvement, as we know. So we want to add on and do many, many newer and better things. So that's on that. The second pillar in the presidential priorities is research. Now, for many of students coming in as an undergrad, you probably don't appreciate the importance of research right away. But rest assured, there are enormous opportunities for you to get involved in research. Most people, as Dan mentioned, that the mission of universities is teaching, and he's the associate dean for academics, and there's an associate dean for research as well. It turns out that in the United States there is almost a compact of sorts between universities and the public, in the sense that universities are where we obviously produce the next generation of leaders by being educators, but we also serve as very key and important drivers of advancement. So everything that you've enjoyed over the past 100 years, if you think of technological advances, almost every one of them had its origins in university as part of a research project. So they are the drivers. The cell phone you have today, everything you have has its origins from the university setting. So that's a very interesting nexus that we have in the United States, that we serve both as drivers of the talent pool in the country, the future leaders. We also drive innovation, so that's an important thing. So that's the second important priority for our president. The third one is more broad engagement. He particularly likes to talk about the fact that universities are perceived as ivory towers and not much contact with reality and things like that. So he wants us to be better engaged with the surrounding community. As a top research university, a top flight university in an urban setting, we have an obligation, a responsibility to be better engaged with our surrounding community. And unfortunately, we have a number of underserved communities right around us. So there is a lot of opportunities for us to engage with them, partner with them, to make sure that we bring the very best talent into the realm of education. So those are the three presidential priorities. So what I'm going to now focus on, or what we're doing in engineering that align themselves with the presidential priorities. So let's focus on the student experience, which, in fact, I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the student experience. So Obviously, we provide a top-flight engineering education, but there are many, many new and interesting things we are doing on the experiential side of things. So I don't know if well, I'll talk about my own experience. So when I went through as an undergrad, a long time ago, I'm afraid, when I went through an undergraduate experience, a lot of it was you get thrown into a class, you sit in these large lectures, and you get taught into, I went through a traditional engineering experience, so I did circuits, I did thermodynamics, you take all these introductory classes. These are all just lecture experiences. But what we found is that it's really palatable, in fact, attractive perhaps to a certain class, a certain kind of student, but it does not make itself useful or interesting or even accessible to a broader class of students. So therefore, we have come up with a first course that's now available to every incoming engineering student. It's called the Roger Susi first year experience. It's part of that. It's a course which is a semester-long course, a hands-on lab-based course, where students come in and they don't just sit in a lecture, but they go directly to a lab, they work in groups of 4, and they pick problems, essentially 2-week modules taken from the various parts, various directions of engineering. So for example, in fact the one they're working on now, it's a piezoelectric sensor, which is that you have materials that react electrically to mechanical stimuli. So you touch on it and they give an electrical response. The question is, how can you use it for various applications? How do you even play with it? How do you even measure it? So they're learning all those things as part of that. So you could argue that has sort of resonances with material science, with mechanical engineering, and some electrical engineering as well. So the whole point is we try to tell students, give them practical experience with very simple, interesting experiments that illustrate the various different disciplines in engineering. It also gives them a hands-on experience, gets them to work together in a group, and it's not in a very high-pressure setting, because most of the time these are like, they don't really know the theory behind how these things work, but we kind of try to whet that appetite by trying to get them doing these 2-week modules. So we have one drawn from civil engineering, one from electrical, one from controls. So it's kind of fun. So that's something that's called the Roger Susi first year experience. The lab itself is located in the basement of Bingham. And I know there are open houses all through today, and I urge you to go look at them. So that's one thing that's very exciting, and that's very new. In fact, that's developed over the past 4 years or so. That's something interesting. The other resources we have that provide a hands-on experience to students, ThinkBox is one of them. How many of you heard of ThinkBox? Yeah. So I'm sure when we take student surveys, they say it was actually a significant reason why they came here. And that's another one which is actually not that formally integrated with the academic side of things. But it's something that our students have to sort of find the self-motivation and interest, and they can go play with really nice toys. In fact, I think we have the largest makerspace, if you think of it as a makerspace, the largest makerspace in the United States by far, I think. It's an amazing jewel. And it's not just, in fact, if you look at ThinkBox, it's not simply a makerspace, because it's also vertically integrated with things beyond just coming and playing with things and producing products. Because if you look at how products are made, there is an ideation stage, and then you build a prototype, and then you test it, and then you have to find somebody interested. So you have to do a market survey to see if this something that you've done is actually of interest, and if it is, then you need to find somebody to back it, so that there's some venture or some money goes into it, so you can start a company. So it's actually an entire continuum from identifying a problem to coming up with a successful product launch. And in ThinkBox, this whole process is vertically integrated. So you start with the ground floor. In the second floor, you play around a little bit. There is a prototyping floor, and in the fifth and sixth floors, we have entrepreneurship and venture creation. We teach them all. So it's actually a great opportunity. So for those students whose experiential interest takes them into the entrepreneurial side, that's a great resource. We also have other clubs, student-run clubs. These are all outside the academic framework. They just organize themselves into clubs, and they go compete in competition. So we have 3 clubs, for example, that have done exceptionally well in national and international competitions. We have the Rocket Club, which I believe finished fifth in overall and first in the category and second overall. You can find that on the web, right? So, and then they had an underwater robotics lab that again finished second in the nation, and then we just heard that the Baja Club finished 5th in the nation. So, and these are all amazing accomplishments because they're competing with peers from every other university you may care to name. So our students do really well. But the interesting part is not that they did well or didn't do well, but the part is that they actually found the gumptions to get together, work together, and compete. It's all self-done. They, in fact, go raise money themselves for this. And many of our alumni support these. So it's actually a very nice sort of a self-started, self-motivated experience that you can do. We also have a few other things, the Center for Engineering Action, Study Abroad. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to actually let Dan, you want to talk a few more because you're very much involved and knowledgeable about the experiential side of things.
Thanks, Raghu. So, yeah, I think what I tell students is, what is it that you're coming to the university to get? I think it's not to sit in a class and do homework and things like that. I mean, that's okay. You could learn things really kind of on your own, with books and YouTube videos. And, that's certainly part of it, coming here, sitting in the class and taking tests and doing homework to learn things. But I think the important thing is going beyond that and making use of all the other great things that Raghu had talked about. And that's the real value of a place like CASE. And I'll give some examples. A few years ago, I was teaching our SAGES course. It's a general education course that I think everyone here will be familiar with. And it included some hands-on building of devices to provide electricity from human power. And the goal was really, it's a communication course. It's not a technical course. And kind of these projects were done really as just a means to get something to talk about in papers and oral presentations. And so I had gotten, some things like some motors and PVC piping that you could kind of build things, and students are doing that. And two students in the class didn't like this. They thought it was kind of silly and amateurish putting these things together. And they told me that, and they said, we want to go, the two of them, to ThinkBox and do our own thing. We have better ideas than yours. And they started drawing these things on the board with these ratchet mechanisms and complicated gearing. And so I said, sure, go. And so when all the other students were working in my class on these PVC things, putting together, they would go off to ThinkBox and then come back at the end. And after a few weeks of this, again, the goal is communication, really. After a few weeks of it, each day they'd come back, they'd say, how's it going? And they're like, yeah, good. And after a few weeks of it, of them saying this, they said, this isn't going anywhere. It's not like you're getting graded on a project, but you need something that you could talk about in a paper, and you have nothing. So it wasn't a pleasant conversation I had to have with them. And so the next day in class, they come in, and they've got this really cool thing they showed me. So they had, spent some extra time, and in ThinkBox, they had built these. They had designed things on a CAD program, these complicated gears, and they had, used a laser cutting and made these really cool, intricate things that actually worked. It spin around one way but not the other, and it was transforming linear motion to rotational that you could then turn a motor to get electricity. And I was like, wow, that's really pretty amazing. And this was a fall course, and there was a final paper about the project. And it turned out there was also due in December a grant proposal to the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, for student design projects. And it was they have a $15,000 grant. And I said to these students, what you did is really cool. I think it would be worthwhile, instead of doing the regular final paper, to submit this proposal for this grant, this $15,000 grant. And so they got really engaged. They're emailing me, Saturday night on this proposal, and get the proposal in, and it's a long process, like 6 months or so. And they got it funded. So their project then turned into a $15,000 grant they got from EPA. And so they continued work on the project as an independent study course. Then they brought in a friend of theirs who was a business student in Weatherhead. These guys were engineers. And they brought in the business student, and they kind of worked on the whole pitch side of things as well, and kind of identifying customer needs and explaining how their technology meets that. And Case had a pitch competition with a $10,000 prize, and they won that. They won the first prize there. So now they're up to $25,000 in their sophomore year. And then the EPA, for all the people that got the grants, all the groups, there's maybe 50 or so all over the country, they had an expo in Washington, D.C., and the group went, and with the business student now, and there was a competition for phase 2 of these EPA grants. Phase 2, there's only maybe about 2 or 3 winners in the country, and there are 75,000. And so these students, they were really impressive. They won that as well. So by the end of their sophomore year, they had won over $100,000 in these competitive competitions, from this thing that I tried to dissuade them from doing. It also involved travel. It's about this kind of off-grid, way to get electricity for off-grid systems. So they traveled to Lesotho with me, with some other students as well, and in Africa. So it really this kind of little project that wasn't supposed to be much, with their ingenuity and resources like ThinkBox, really turned into a cool thing where they really excelled. So that's just one story. I've got a lot of these as well, and other things. So again, the idea is, I think, to do more than just classes. So anyway.
So that's exactly the point. So I actually gave a student welcome about 3-4 weeks ago to the students. I told them, look, you will take classes because, you'll get a degree, but the point is, the experience of coming to a university like Case is much beyond that. There's so much else. And I said, you need to own it because you're growing up at this time, not just intellectually, as I said, but as a human being. So just grab it at both hands, embrace it, and just evolve. Because what we're doing is not just producing engineers alone, we're producing the future leaders. In fact, yesterday at the alumni dinner, we honored a bunch of people, and one of them was CEO of Synopsys, retired CEO of Synopsys. For those of you who know electronic design automation, that's the company that runs the number one the EDA software for how chips are designed. For example, the former chief operating officer of Microsoft, another company you may have heard of, that's one of ours. So we have a lot of amazing leaders. And many of them started in engineering, and they did other things. So that's the point we want to make, that of course, we want them to stay in engineering and contribute in that way as well, but the future is wide open. So that's another thing. In fact, the other thing that maybe you can talk about is the chair they designed over the summer for the women's tennis tournament.
So there's... Again, I think the thing is to go beyond just doing homework problems and doing real things. A couple of years ago, a Cleveland sports group, sports management group, started hosting a professional women's tennis tournament here. So it is, a high-level women's tournament where all the players go on. It's a week before the U.S. Open, and all the players in it go on to play in the U.S. Open the following week. And so the people from the sports management company, they had this idea to involve case in it. And particularly, the thought was to get engineering students involved in designing some of the things to be used in the tournament. It was a new tournament. They wanted to do something different, not just be, the same. They chose a really cool venue for it. It's in the flats. If you know, it's by the Cuyahoga River. There's a kind of like a concert venue, and the tournament is there. And you see in the background, it's like an open venue, and you see the skyline in the background, and big ships are going by in the river. So really cool. And so last year, the project was to design the umpire chairs for that. And so we had a student who then worked with, the sports management company. They talked to professional umpires to see what their needs are. So, and they designed and built in ThinkBox these really cool umpire chairs. And this year, the project was to design and build the chairs that the players sit on when they change between games. They have like a 2 or 3 minute rest and they sit down. So on either side of the umpire chairs. So, it's really cool because, again, the company just kind of gave the parameters. These are the things we need, but we want creativity. We want something to be different. The whole point of doing this, they could have easily bought umpire chairs and benches. That's an easy thing to do. But they wanted creativity and something new. And our students that did this really knocked it out of the park, and it was really cool. And for me, it was a lot of fun. I'm a tennis fan. To see these players that were doing it, sitting in these seats and interacting with the umpire in the chair, go on to the U.S. Open the week later, and last year, one of these players, beat the #1 seed at the Open. This year, one of the players beat last year's champion at the Open. So it's really cool to see then, our things designed by the K students, being used, in this common way.
All right, I think it's time to open it up for questions and make it a real conversation. I think this is the problem. When you give professors the mic, I said 15 minutes and I've gone on and on and on. But it's kind of fun, right? So, okay, Steve, you want to...
All right, so here's the format. Have you raise your hands. I'll try to get to as many of you as possible. Please tell the dean your name, if you're a parent, or if you're an alumnus, and the alumni, if it's you, please also tell them the class year, and maybe even what department you got a degree in. So, who will be first? We got a gentleman right here. There you go.
Hi, my name is Rick Hagel, class of 71, BS, Mechanical Engineering. That device that won all the awards, the 100,000, are we going to get to see that when we do our ThinkBox tour?
This is a factual question, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
So, it was a great experience for the students, but of course people move on to other things, and then the student that was kind of leading up the technical side, he went on and did a BSMS and was doing research in battery technology. And so I think the thing is it was it's good to find your things and do them, and it was an incredible experience, and then moved on to other things.
When was this?
So I think they started in 2013.
So I guess the short answer to your question is no, you can't see it. Oh, no, not at all. No, I think what happens is that as with most human creative endeavor, you do a lot of things, right? And a lot of it is not necessarily, it's not the end that's important, it's the means to the end. The learning is important, the experience is important. And, in the venture business, they always say, maybe 8%, 10% of the companies make it. So this was probably a great experience for them. And not anything that wins a prize gets commercialized. So I guess the moral of the story is the punch here is not about the product itself, but the journey that the students took and the skills that they absorb in it. That would be my way of explaining it.
Okay, we have another question.
Hi, my name is Lamia, and I'm a mother of a freshman child. My son is doing mechanical engineering. And my question is that, like you spoke about this entrepreneurial journey of the student, which started in the Think Box. So my question is that how can engineering students weave in entrepreneurial knowledge, not just about creating a product, but also the academic side of it, if they want to do a kind of a dual degree or maybe study in engineering as well as business. Is that possible?
Sure. So I think you're talking about a little bit more formalized sort of education in terms of that. I'm going to toss it over to Dan in a second, but I would point out that there is almost a continuum of what you can do. On the one hand, you can just dabble in it and work with other people who bring in the entrepreneurial side. You can be a collaborator. You can do that's one extreme. The other extreme is, as you said, you become steeped in the techniques yourself. In other words, by taking a dual degree or something like that. And there is this whole continuum possible. In fact, in the middle, we also offer opportunities, very short courses to our students where we even take them, fly them out to the Bay Area to meet VCs and so on. So there are all kinds of opportunities possible. But in terms of the specific thing you asked, which is about the other end of the spectrum, can they actually get a formal degree? I'm going to turn it over to.
Yeah, so we have, I forgot the exact number, but I think about 40% of our students do a minor. It's pretty easy to do a minor. And I think about half of those do a minor in business. And I believe it's about 20% of our students do a minor in business. The other minors are all over the place: music, dance, sociology, French. So.
Can be completed within the assigned 4 years, or does it require extra semesters?
Yeah, minor you could do within the 4 years. So we have all engineering students have to take 4 breadth elective courses, and those could be in business if say the student wanted, or whatever field. A minor is 5 classes. So 4 of them could be from the breadth, and then the other one, usually there's some kind of broader technical elective that could count for that. I'm most familiar with chemical engineering because that's my field. There we have 3 technical electives, of which you could take business, and then there's these 4 breadth electives, which you could take business. So if a chemical engineering student wanted, they could take 7 business classes in the curriculum with nothing extra.
So the moral of the story is, yes, it can be done, but it perhaps requires a little bit of planning, because if you end up taking those 3 classes like scattershot areas, it's hard to package them into a minor. So some intentionality, talking to the advisor to see how you can do it. So the earlier you start, the better. And we can have, as Dan was mentioning, I've had people who did macromolecular engineering and dance. It's amazing. Very talented, multiple ways. So. Okay.
Hi, my name is Pin Lu. I'm a cancer researcher. I'm from Philadelphia. Yeah, my daughter is a freshman, and she's undecided. So I'm trying to steer her into like engineering or chemistry. So I tried very hard, and still, and she got sick, so she's not coming today. So I just wondering, it seems like chemical engineering is a niche. So I just wonder how many students selected major in this field, and it's more like engineering or more like chemistry?
So obviously this question is best answered by Dan, but I want to just mention to you that I have a 17-year-old boy, and the whole idea of trying to steer them, I think you're being a little bit ambitious. Optimistic, I don't know, I can give you many euphemisms for what you're trying to do. Because, one thing I've learned from my son is that I know nothing. So it doesn't matter in any area. So in this case, he says, by the way, you didn't grow up in this country. So a double whammy, right? So good luck with that, but to answer your question here.
So Yeah, I think there are a number of majors in engineering that I think are kind of more closely tied to science and this kind of thing. So I would say chemical engineering and biomolecular engineering, and I think macromolecular engineering are all kind of tied in ways to science and research. All majors are, but I'd say particularly those, especially to like life sciences kinds of work. The nice thing about engineering, I think, say chemical engineering, again, that's my field. I used to be department chair, and I would be plugging it. Is it gives you the opportunity to go into many, many different things. So we have chemical engineers that go on to medical school. We have chemical engineers that go on to, do research in, biomedical kind of areas. We have students that go on to work in industry for pharmaceutical companies, like Pfizer and Abbott and things like that. And so the nice thing is that there's all that opportunity, say, in these kind of health-oriented, but then there's opportunities in all types of other fields as well, from, traditional chemical things, Lubrizol, right, and materials, and so there's foods, and there's really a huge variety of things that you could do with chemical engineering, patent law even, and so I think with engineering you put yourself in really good shape to kind of go off in all different directions.
Yeah, if I may add a little bit more to that, so quite often we tend to overthink and overanalyze and over-worry about exactly what major and things like that. Because in the end, if you look at any degree, it doesn't really train you to be a technical person right away in industry and things like that. Our electrical engineers, they still need a little bit more training after that, right? So because in fact, the standard answer is that we teach students how to think and how to be lifelong learners, two important things. And that's the reason why many of them don't even stay in engineering. As I mentioned, I gave you a couple of examples. They become executives, they become doctors, they can become lawyers. So from that perspective, I think you shouldn't overthink it. So don't put too much stress on yourself or your student.
Dean, we have a question here from one of our alumni.
Hi, my name is Eric Snyder. I majored in systems and control engineering. I'm a graduate of 72, so I am here along with some others to celebrate our 50th reunion this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I have a comment and a question. First, the comment. I have been able to serve on the junior, senior scholarship committee, interviewing students for CASE alumni scholarships. And I have to tell you that I have been very impressed with the talent that is coming to CASE. And I've done this a couple times now, and it's I think the parents here should be very proud of their sons and daughters that are enrolled here. And I like the emphasis on the trend toward more real world engineering. I think that's great. So kudos to you and the admissions office for bringing all the talent you do to this school. My question is this, and it's not an academic question. I know there are new student dorms being built, and one of the things that attracted me to CASE, aside from the fact that it had a very good reputation for academics, was that when I came here, all the student dorms were single rooms, and the new university housing that's being built, I was surprised to read that it's a mixture of doubles and singles, and I just wondered what the thinking was behind that, because I think we all know how hard people work when they come here, and having some quiet time in your own room is important. And so I was surprised. At the time, I thought it was a huge competitive advantage that CASE had over almost every other school in the country, that you offered single dormitory rooms to all the students. So what was the thinking in making the change for the new dormitories?
Okay, excellent question. I don't think I have a clear answer to that one. Would you? You would. Yeah. So of course, I'm going to sort of speculate a little bit as to why that might be the case. Now, COVID hit us 2 years ago, and we initially thought that the number of incoming students was going to drop. So we were very worried about admitting students 2 years ago. And what happened was that we ended up admitting, eventually matriculating 10% more students than we had bargained for. So we typically want to bring in about 1450. We ended up at 1550, right? So it's about 10% more. So so that was during COVID. And we thought, was that going to be a one-time thing or not? And then we had a new president come on, and he has decided that he would try to make that increase in student numbers permanent. So many reasons why you want to do it. You obviously, when you make decisions about admitting 10% more students permanently, having the incoming class be larger by 10%, it's got many positives and negatives. But one of the positives said it's more revenue, you grow, growth is good, that sort of a thing. On the negative side, it places constraints on resources, classroom space, and dorm space. So I think the university is building new dorms. I think it's always going to be a trade-off between the size and our desire to locate students on campus, every student on campus. And at some point, something has to give. That would be my overall thinking, but I don't have any insight into how the decisions were made. So, but that's how I'd frame and analyzing this thing, saying, yep, it is a constrained system. X number of students, Y, space available is Y. How do you apportion it so that you can fit them in there? That might have been the thinking. But beyond that, everything I said so far is still a conjecture. That's my theory.
Dean, we're midway through the time period here. Would you terribly mind if I threw a commercial message in?
Do I have a choice? I mean, no. Okay, if you just notice the dynamic, he says to me, wait, I gotta finish this. So he says to me, would you mind if I throw in a commercial? And he doesn't even wait for my answer. No. I'm Steve, I can kid with you, and that's why I do.
Eric mentioned the Junior Senior Scholarship Program. And I'm sure many of the parents are scratching their heads saying, well, what in the world is that? The Case Alumni Association has a program where we offer scholarships to students in their junior and senior years. So that means in their sophomore year, if they have a grade point average above a 3, can't imagine a Case student not, if they can get nominated by department chair or the dean, and they follow a couple of quick, easy steps of just filling out an application online. They interview a student with alumni like Eric or John here, and they are given scholarships anywhere in the range of $3,000 to $8,000 a year for the junior and senior years. I'm mentioning this right now because a lot of the times, more than half of the students that are nominated don't do it. They don't fill out the application. Folks, it takes 10 minutes. That's all it takes. So as parents, I would hope that you would encourage them and remind them midway through their sophomore year to pay attention for that. And I know, John, you had a question, but you have participated in that for a few years. John's a past president of the Case Alumni Association. John?
Thank you, Steve. I just want to add a comment before my question, that as an alum, I agree with you 10,000% that it is a heartwarming and inspiring process to see the young people come forward and tell their stories, and to see the achievement that they've made even in a couple of short years here at Case in the School of Engineering. And it's heartwarming to be able to spend other people's money and maybe a little bit of my own to help them in their last 2 years. So I can endorse this program 10,000%. So please go forward. My name is John Massey. I'm a graduate of the Case Institute of Technology in 1966. So I'm one of those old guys, but young at heart. My major is an interesting story, but I won't bore you with it, but I'm an undesignated engineer, and a previous dean used to always introduce me, if I was in a group, as his generic engineer, because I took all my electives as an undergraduate in the graduate school in computer science and computer engineering. And at the time, the university hadn't certified an undergraduate degree in computer science. We were way ahead of the curve, I guess, at that point. My question, Dean, is over the years I've observed a strange phenomenon at Case, and I'm sure we're not unique among schools, but it seems as though the football teams that take the field every year and the star players are always engineers, or not totally, but an awful lot of them are engineers. And I'm wondering if you have a theory as to why an engineer makes a great football player. I have a theory, but I'd like to know what your theory is.
Okay, so I'm going to let that question simmer a little bit because I think we need to come up very creative in answering your question. But before I do that, Steve, with your permission, I want to do a commercial shout out.
Notice he paused.
So I want to say, many of you are probably wondering, what's this alumni association? Who are these people who are sort of doing these things? So we obviously have a very rich set of alumni, and the alumni are formally part of the CASE Alumni Association, which is actually unique to engineering because of our history. If you remember, or if you know, the CASE Western Reserve University was formed as a federation of the CASE Institute of Technology and the Western Reserve University or College, I don't remember, in 1967. So because the history of the CASE Institute of Technology predates the Federation, the Alumni Association has been in existence for much longer before the Federation. And I cannot think of a much more committed organization in terms of engaging an alumni in multiple things, but also in financially supporting our students. So I would urge your students to, as Steve mentioned, to be aggressive in looking out for additional dollops of money, and they are amazingly good at making sure that the process is done correctly. And they actually, in return, they get the thrill of interacting with students who are essentially, fountains of youth, so to speak, because we age, but we look at new students every time, so it keeps us young. I think that's part of the fun, I think, right? Not only be impressed with the intellectual strength of the students, but also engage with a newer set of CASE potential CASE alumni, right? So anyway, so that's the plus. Now, as to why are CASE engineers dominating football? And why would it be? I don't know. Do you think, is he going to say something like, well, they look at the place and they analyze it and they can quickly compute answers and throw them? Or are they just good? I don't know. I don't know, John. John, wow us with your answer. Because do you have any ideas? Oh, wait, here's one. I want to hear my associate Dean.
Well, I was going to say, well, for one thing, kind of back to the point we were saying that coming to CASE is beyond the classes and doing homework, and find the things you're passionate about, whether it's like a think box project or doing research, or it could be sports too. So I think people do sports much more at CASE than at a big university like Ohio State. Many more people are involved in sports, and of course, football, as you say, in tennis, they have they finished second in the country in the last 2 years, and the leading players are engineers there as well.
Oh, I just thought of something. So obviously we're in D3, so we're not in D1, right? So I personally know of at least one case where a student who was really, really good was also interested in athletics, and this was the only place they could come where they could balance the two. And this was actually when I was at Purdue, the department chair in biomedical engineering. His son expressly chose CASE because he could be a quarterback here. So that's because it is not in D1 sports. If you go to Division I sports, if you're an athlete, it takes over your life. You have to. In fact, I don't want to get any D1 programs in trouble, but that emphasis is somewhat weighted more towards a little bit more towards the athletic success. Whereas here, I think our athletic students have better GPAs than the average population. They just this is a very serious place from an academic perspective, And you can still do sports. I think that opportunities here, you wouldn't have that in the other bigger places, and that's maybe a theory. You had an answer, did you not?
I took his microphone from him. I'm over here for the parent.
But his voice is so good.
I know. He's that's why we.
Weren't you an announcer or something?
The voice of Case Western Reserve.
Yeah, he was the voice. Yeah, but you also noted that he didn't need a mic. His voice carries.
It doesn't. Sure.
I think that what it really says about Case and Case engineers in general is that the education that your students and those of you that are students receive here is a great entree into all sorts of fields in the future. People say to me, what was the most significant thing you learned at Case as an engineer? And I said, how to frame a problem and come up with a solution. And that's what engineers do. And that serves you in life when your kids are in trouble. It saves you in your marriage many times. But more important than anything, it really prepares you for the future and to earn a living and to support your family. So I'm off my soapbox.
Dean, we have a question from a parent.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Susana, and my son is a freshman, and he's interested. He wants to major in computer science, and he's an athlete as well. So, and he chose Case because he felt that he was going to get the right balance here. So, my question is about when we came to Admitted Student Days. We went to the computer science talk, and they were talking about the expansion of the department because of the number of enrollees. So I wanted to see if you could give us an update on how that's going and what you foresee.
Excellent question. So 4 years ago when I came here, there was no computer science department. There were degrees being offered, but there was no department. And there was computer science part of electrical engineering and computer science, so it was like that. And two reasons why I thought it was better to actually have a separate standing department. One of them, of course, is the student interest in numbers. I mean, but it's not just a Case Western, there's a phenomenon. You go to any university, they're literally bursting at the seams. So that's one thing. So that was one reason. The other reason why we thought we should have a standalone computer and data science department is that if you look at the research that's going on anywhere in this day and age, it's all got computer and data sciences behind it. You look at COVID, pandemic prediction models, sure, it's got data science in it. You look at, art forensics, sure, there is computer science and data mining behind it. So it turns out that as a research enabler and as something that's almost the air that we breathe in the research environment, computer and data sciences is fast becoming that. So for that reason, we thought we should do it. Now, the challenge in academia is that when the number of students goes up by 20%, we cannot instantaneously increase the number of faculty by 20%. So we do have a plan for growing the department, and we're doing it. In fact, we're hiring more aggressively in computer and data sciences than in any other department. I can say that. Last year we hired 3 people, for example. So we're continuing to grow it. We're also doing a big renovation of the Olin building across campus. It's going to be the new home for the new department. We have an NVIDIA executive who's a very committed alumnus. His name is Kevin Kranchich, and he's committed at this point, he's committed $10 million for that effort. Overall, for the department and for the building and for professorships and so on. So we are in the process of ramping up very quickly. As I mentioned to you, in academia, hiring goes on a slightly different scale because when you hire people, we can't fire them. We don't want to fire anyone, but downsizing is hard in academia because of tenure, and so you hire them. You're actually making a commitment that's almost a lifelong commitment. So we tend to be a little bit cautious in the pace with which we expand, but we will expand computer and data sciences. The other challenge in computer and data sciences is that if you're hiring in pure computer science, you're not just competing with the Carnegie Mellons and Stanfords to recruit your professors, you're also competing with the Googles and Amazon. And I can tell you that they pay 3 or 4 times what we offer. So we do, it's ridiculous how much valuable a computer science degree. And the other thing is, everything is moving in that direction as well. So we try to encourage everyone to do a little bit of computing in everything that they do, both at the master's, PhD, as well as at undergraduate level. So for those reasons, I think that there will always be a lag. And I hear, when I talk to my colleagues across the nation, they also complain about exactly this, that they can't hire fast enough. But the interest is just incredible. And I think it's not a fad. I think it's here to stay.
Dean, we have time for one final question. I know you have a busy schedule today. We have one from a member of the class of 1957.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks, John Massey. Thank you, Dean Raghu and others. I don't really have a question because at the 65th reunion, you're supposed to have the answers, right?
And you probably do.
I do. And I also, my 60th from the Weatherhead School. So, I just want to thank you, and you are doing a great job. And some years back, I compared K-Stack with Harvey Mudd. There's a common link here. Sam Tannenbaum, who's my in-law, was dean there and senior prof here. Anyway, so what's the most important stakeholder at the university? Is it faculty, students, or the community? And the answer is none of the above. The most important one is your biggest one. It's called alumni. And I'd like to thank Steve and John Massey and all the others, and I go way back to Grant Anderson. And all the way, I was a deputy agent raising money by calling, but now it's a different kind of collection. So keep on reaching out to the alumni. I appreciate it, everybody who graduated here. And the reason that engineers make good football players, they are solution-oriented, as John said.
Well, thank you all. And enjoy the rest of your weekend, I guess.
Thank you.
Steve, want to close us out?
Sure. Really want to thank all of you for attending, and great questions. Really super. I think we could have gone on for another hour, but that does conclude it. I know that Dean Raghu's got quite a tight schedule, and I think all of you do as well. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.